Hey everybody, I'm Chris Floyd. I'm going to be doing a book presentation today on Letters to a Young Scientist by E.O. Wilson. The reason I chose this book is because we had a choice to choose any E.O. Wilson book, and I have a personal philosophy that if you can understand how the pros in any discipline operate, or excuse me, if you understand how the pros in one discipline operate, you can kind of understand how the pros in another discipline are going to operate also. So E.O. Wilson's a biologist, a retired professor, and a Pulitzer Prize winning author. So I'd say he's kind of at the tip of the spear in a couple things there. And definitely a brain I wanted to pick, so I tried to find something more of the biographical style, and this is as close as I could get. I can't say for sure that there is not a biography for him out there, but this is what I found. So, the synopsis, basically, it's the book is a series of letters, if you could imagine, by the title, and it basically goes in chronological order in his life relating to science. It starts out in his childhood, where he was just basically a curious kid in Alabama around World War II. Whenever all the men were all fighting or whatever, he covered down as the animal expert at Boy Scout camp, and that's kind of where his curiosity started. And then it goes on through college, and he explains basically the big steps, the big moments in his career to becoming a world-renowned ant expert. And it's just really interesting to get his insight about the experiments and the whole scientific process in general. You probably could have called this book "Advice to a Young Person" and got away with it, because it fits in many different aspects there. Some of my favorite parts, it was easy to read. First of all, yeah, I grew up in the South. My grandpa talks like this, and whenever I was reading the book, I was talking like this the whole time. And it turns out that is actually how E.O. Wilson kind of talks. So I found it easy to relate to in that regard. Also, just some of the things he talks about in the book, his enthusiasm for it is evident throughout the whole thing. He encourages you to do those things that maybe we don't get encouraged to do in class a lot, like daydream. He says that's kind of the daydream is where you find your imagination. Imagination is where you find your discoveries, right? Another one of my favorite parts is learning about the ants. Of course, world-renowned ant expert. He'll drop some knowledge on you. It was fun to learn about how the different defense mechanisms with the ants. How even when they would die, sometimes they would release the pheromones or the hormones, and the other ants would still react to them, even if they were dead. I thought that was interesting. And basically, he encourages anybody with any scientific interest to pursue it, and I really like that part about it. And he says it's all about finding the problems and solving them. I'm really good at finding problems. The impact, big picture of this book, I think it encourages young people to pursue scientific careers. It almost convinced me that I should pursue a scientific career, and then I remembered my scientific grades. So that's kind of out. Another thing is, this book seemed it was very relatable. I found it to be very relatable, especially in terms of whenever he talks about making accidental discoveries and stuff. And it reminds me of, as a medic in the Army, that would happen a lot. I would think I was looking for one thing and I would end up finding another. In fact, it happened with my first patient that I ever had. He had been coming in for a couple days with stomach issues, throwing up, nausea, diarrhea, the whole nine. And they let him go for 2 days straight, and on the third day, I screened him. It was my first day as a medic, and I nearly let him go until he hopped off the table. When he hopped off the table, his feet hit the floor, he winced in pain. That set off that aha moment for me, and I realized that he may have had appendicitis, and he did. So I like to joke that that's the first life that I ever saved, although I'm sure I didn't save his life. So that's definitely a big impact, is that he does a great job of breaking it down, Barney style, as we would call it in the Army, just to the most simple terms, the most easy to understand way. The way he said he'll lead you to his thought, or lead you through his thought process, is definitely beneficial here. Another big impact for this one is you don't have to be good at math. You don't have to be good at math. That's a big one because I'm not good at math. Math is very important in some fields, such as physics or astronomy, but it's only part of the equation with other things. And he makes the point that you can always find somebody who's good at math if it's just part of the equation. Again, it seemed like a call to arms. Like he wanted people to pursue a scientific career. And he encourages anybody who has any scientific interest, regardless of how smart you are, how educated you are, to pursue it and stick to it. If just watching noticing small things in everyday life or different patterns in everyday life could end up could snowball into a contribution to science, more or less, is the way he explains it. And plus, if nothing else, he subconsciously tricks you into thinking it's going to be an awesome job, because who else wouldn't want to be like, well, I was in the Amazon, or I was in Australia, or all kinds of other exotic places. Another one of and this may have been a favorite part more than a big picture thing, is he talks about mentors. And I think that was a big thing for me personally. Growing up, I worked in restaurants all through high school, and then I moved on to I worked at oil fields for a couple years after high school. And then I joined the Army, stayed in the Army for 7 years. And then I was a plant manager at a textile plant. And in all those situations, the only reason I was successful is because I was able to find somebody to latch onto as a mentor. And he talks about having mentors and being a mentor, which I think is important, because, if you have knowledge that you can, just because somebody's higher above you in the pecking order, so to speak, doesn't mean that you can't teach them something or you can't learn something from them, and vice versa. You can always learn a grade above and a grade below or whatever. What was learned? Everybody has something to contribute. Curiosity, ambition, enthusiasm help more than anything in the scientific community. Math, not a requirement. High amounts of intelligence, not a requirement. Again, reading the book, it seemed like a good old country boy was writing it, and that was one of the reasons I really enjoyed the book, and I was able to soak it in as much as I could. Don't be afraid to fail. He makes that point. Every experiment doesn't work. Most experiments probably don't work. Sometimes even when you do think they're working, they don't. So that was a big one for me. And for me, it was inspiring and assuring, because, one of my goals in coming back to college at 32 years old is to figure out what my passion is in life. I've worked all my life. I don't necessarily want to work jobs the rest of my life so much as find something I enjoy doing. And I don't know if it's science or if my passion would pay at all, but hopefully I commit to something like E.O. Wilson has committed to science. And in conclusion, if you think you might have an interest in a career in science, or really if you have an interest in a career in anything, this is a great book to read. I would say it would just be good advice to a young person even. But Letters to a Young Scientist by E.O. Wilson, highly recommended.